CMPRadio.net. It's the station.
Good afternoon, good evening, whichever time you're looking at this program or this broadcast. I'm John Linder. I'm a former mayor of the city of Chester, retired professor of sociology and psychology from Delaware County Community College, and welcome to this program. And I just call this program to inform and inspire. So I'm hoping that you will be informed by some of the information we share and inspired by the words and the ideas for motivation. Today, and first of all, I'd like to say thank you to CMP Radio for hosting us and having us here. This is really important to me anyway, because as mayor of the city of Chester, I know many times our community is not informed of things that are most important for them. And my goal here today is to share some things with you that's going on in the community. Now, before I go to what I came to talk about today, I just want to remind you that last time I was here, I talked about a carpentry program that's going on, and the program is called CTEP, and that CTEP, C-T-E-P, that's for the Chester Trades Education Project. That project is sponsored by Delaware County Community College, Riverside Futures, which is my nonprofit. It's also sponsored by the Swarthmore and the Chester Rotaries and the Chester Housing Authority. And if I have some time today, when I finish telling you this new information, I'm going to go back to that and share that with you and let you know about that again for those of you who might have missed that. Okay, currently I'm the founder, CEO of Riverside Futures Regional Community Development Corporation. I know that's a mouthful, but I plan to do a mouthful. So Riverside Futures Regional Community Development Corporation. Now, we specifically didn't say up Chester because Chester impacts the region. And we have to know what our place is in the community, in the Chester community, in Delaware County, in the southeast corridor, as well as the world. We need to understand how we impact the world and things that are going to come. So stay tuned as we do these broadcasts, and you're going to hear a lot of information focusing on Chester's role in not only in this community, but in the world and in the region. I want to talk today about a program that's coming up. It's going to be January the 27th, and it's a program that specifically about the reentry community. And the program is called Reentry, Resetting, and Redemption. At some point, you'll see a flyer on this program. If you have not seen it on Facebook or on my page, it's all over the place, and hope you see it more and look for it. Reentry, Resetting, and Redemption. Chester has a huge reentry population. Most urban communities do. Most people that come back to this community come back with no skills. They come back the same way they left. They come back and they're not out of jail long, and they go right back. And it's a revolving door. They call that recidivism. So a program was designed and sponsored primarily and designed, sponsored by a friend of mine. His name is Jonathan Abdul Rahim King. Most of you in the community here know Rahim. People call him Rahim, people call him Jonathan, but most of you know him. He is a returning individual. He's been here, been out of jail for quite some time now, but he's dedicated his life to helping other people who come back into the community to help them reset. If you look at the title, reentry, then reset, and then push towards redemption. So this is a loaded title because as you can see, it has 3 stages. So what we're going to do is we're going to just talk about the workshop a little bit, and I'll try to break some of those stages down. But I encourage you, whether or not you're part of the reentry community in that you have done some time, or whether you're part of the reentry community if you have a family member who's been incarcerated, or whether you're part of the reentry community by way of just being part of the product of Chester, because all of us have to work with people who come back, and you're going to be real surprised to know if you come to this workshop, some of the people who are in our community who are from the reentry community who are really thriving, striving, thriving, and succeeding, and are major contributors to community capital development. And we'll talk about that down the line. But we have some panelists, and one of them, again, is Jonathan Abdul Rahim King. He's not only just part of the evolution of this program, but he's going to be on that panel. And many of you know him. He has businesses here, and you know him from Safe Corridors. He's always out there up at the school, and he and his group are looking to try to make it safe for the children going back and forth to the charter school up on 12th and 15th and Highland, up in that area. And Safe Corridors is his nonprofit, and he's done very well with that in terms of providing services to the community. And he will be on there talking about reentry, what it's like. Some of you remember former deceased Richard Carter, who was very, very big on reentry and really pushed for that. So a lot of what we're doing now is in Richard Carter's name, because he was a force for reentry and very encouraging to Jonathan King as well as myself when I was mayor. So we give tribute to Richard Carter. So another person who's going to be on that program, his name is Sod Solomon. And as you'll see the flyer with Jonathan and Sod there, Sod is also a reentrant in this community, but very productive. And if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see his bio, his Vita. He has a number of businesses that he is involved in. He's the executive director of Piece by Piece at Wilmington, Delaware. He's a member of the National Reentry Systems, SME. He's part of the criminal justice reform. He's an advocate there. He's also part of he's a systems organizer. He's an inspired trainer. He's a proven leader. And he is going to be very, very rich in terms of what he has to share with the community, especially those of you, even if you're not part of the reentry community, those of you who want to know about entrepreneurialism and how to get your businesses started outside is the guy. And with him and Jonathan there together, along with some other special guests, we really are going to have a great time looking at some of those things that go on with the reentry population. They say that Sod is a serial entrepreneur and a wealth creation strategist, and he does executive coaching. So when we think of the reentry community, we think of people who have come out of jail and they're in the community, terrorizing the community, going back on the corner, selling drugs, getting arrested and rearrested again. A lot of that happens, and a lot of it happens because the time that is spent in jail is not productive time. See, some people can go to jail and they can do time. That's the time that the judge gives you. That's the time that you're in there, you're in a cell, you're an inmate. And some people go in there and they turn the jailhouse into a greenhouse. They go in there and they take their time and they start to read, they start to look at where their weaknesses are. They look at what their strengths are, where they want to be stronger. They look at their dreams and they feed those dreams so that when they come out and they get the opportunity, they take advantage of that opportunity. They say that success is where preparedness and opportunity meet. And one of the things that I've been going in and out of the jails, especially Chester SCI prison, I've been going over there since the year 2000, visiting and talking to inmates there and talking to people, trying to get them motivated to look at themselves, do self-exploration, sharing with them images and information from my psychology and sociology classes, and they really appreciated it. And one of the things that I used to tell them, take this time that you have in here, because all you have is time, and you can do the time or let the time do you and take advantage of the time. And I found that many of the people who I talk to, and I've seen them over the years come out of jail, or they've called me, Professor Linder, I'm out of jail now, remember me. And sometimes I have to think back who they were because their names change and all, but I see them walking down the streets of Philadelphia. They stopped me and said, Professor Linder, remember you came to Chester SCI to visit me. And this is what I'm doing now. So one of the things we can do is to help encourage people. You can be an encouraging person, and you don't have to be rich to be encouraging. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to be famous to be encouraging. All you gotta do is be decent, be human, be empathic, be respectful of the fact that you didn't go. A lot of my friends, just to be full disclosure, went to jail. I hung around with a lot of different people when I was younger. I was fortunate enough to be able to move in and out of different crowds of people, and some they were on the shady side. You know, I was dabbled a little bit over there, but I also was able to move back over into the side where people were moving forward and progressing. And so when we look at people and we look at the reentry community, let's not look at them with disdain, even though they've done some things that have really been egregious, sometimes to ourselves personally, as well as to our families and to the community. So let's think about, well, hey, this person needs a second chance. And sometimes we see them going the wrong way. Let's go. Here's something I used to use when I went into the prison to visit. And I talked to them, and some people would say, man, you know, I like what you've been doing, Professor Linder, you've done this and done that. And I said, hey, look at your neighbor. I said, there go I, were it not for the grace of God. That's what I would say to them. I'm nobody special, except somebody gave me a chance because God made a way for me to have that chance. So I got to keep looking for another me, so to speak, not to be like me, but someone else that I can give a chance. So when we see someone from the reentry community coming back into the community, let's try to find out how we can help them. And if you come to this workshop, you're going to hear some things that are really going to inspire you, again, whether you're part of the reentry community or not. So we plan to have this, this is the third in a series of workshops, and we had planned to have this workshop at Widener, but because of the uptake in the uprise in COVID cases, Widener has canceled some outside things so we can have this virtual. We're going to do this one virtual and plan to have the next one at Widener in the springtime. So if we can get you to take a look at this and see what's going on. We also plan to have some special guests, and which I can't talk about right now until we get permission, but one of the people that we're going to have there is Celeste Trusty, and she is Director of Policy, or has been in the role of Director of Policy at the state of Pennsylvania for criminal justice reform. Some of you may have some questions and all about criminal justice, and if you don't know what recidivism is, you might want to stay tuned and come to that workshop and take a look, or I'm sorry, I still say come, but look at the workshop. Get on Zoom and register for that workshop, and you'll hear some of the answers to what recidivism is. Just recidivism is the revolving door that goes on. People go to prison, they come back out, and they go back to prison. Some go back right away. I've known people to come out of prison on a Friday, and Sunday they were back in prison. Why does this happen? What goes on with the person and in their mind? I'm working currently with a young man, and I call him young man. He's over 70 years old. He's been in prison 41 years. I'm not going to talk about him right now, but at some point I hope to have him as a guest here for him to talk to you and share with you some of the things that he's told me and some of the things that we've seen together while he was in prison when I was coming to visit him as a visitor. And right now, I'm working with him as a mentor. I do what I can to help him, but I say young man because he's 41 years young. The world has moved 2 or 3 different times since he's gone to jail, since he's been incarcerated. And I told them, when I say them, I'm talking about the inmates that were at the seminars that I did when I went to SCI. They say that the information on the internet, 70% of it changes every day. So when you go to bed tonight, 70% of the information that you saw the day before, or there's new information, or some of the information is the same, but it's moved around. You ever go back and you say, well, I'm gonna go back and check that link out. That link is different, or it moved, or there's more information added to it, especially on Wikipedia. So go to other sources other than Wikipedia. But 70% of the information moves every day. And in the workforce development arena, 70% of the jobs that are going to be available 20 years from now haven't even been developed yet. We don't even know what some of those jobs are. So if you go to jail for 1 year and 70% of the information's changing, and I told them, I said 70% of your world has changed. This person I'm talking about, he had a program in the prison called the DADS program, D-A-D-S. And these were fathers who came to jail with drug problems. And he said that they decided that they were going to do something for themselves so that they could be able to help their families, because many of them came to jail when their children were 4 and 5 years old. 10, 15 years away from that, their children are 19 years old. Some were 12 years old. Some were adolescents. By the time they got out of jail, they didn't know how to work with their families because they were dads that were in prison, and plus they had drug problems. So Dads Against, and DADS is an acronym, D-A-D-S, is Dads Against Drugs in Society. So they would counsel and work with each other, talk with each other. They got peer training to be able to do that. What I added to them was teaching them systematic interpersonal skills, systematic interpersonal intervention, teaching them how to talk to each other, and teaching them how to talk to groups of people, teaching them how to talk to their families, to their children, because they missed many of the developmental milestones of their children. So you'll hear, especially Sod Solomon talk about that. You're going to hear Jonathan King talk about his experience. I hired Jonathan when I was the mayor, and I hired him in my office. And some people wonder how people get jobs, Well, how did he get that job? Well, when I was a councilman, I used to ride around the city, and I'd go and I'd talk to people, I'd listen to people and try to find out what I could do to help in my role, and especially with the violence that was on the streets. And I'd see Jonathan out there hustling all the time. He had a store, or a couple of stores, I believe, but the one I'm thinking of particularly, I went to that store and I talked to him. And I talked to him, asking him some things about the community. And a lot of times when you wear a shirt and tie and a suit around your community, some people don't think you're really from the community. They think you're a transplant. I look like a professional. So that's just what I wear. And most of the time when I was teaching, I looked like a professor, so I had a suit and tie on. But I talked to him about some things, and I asked him some questions. And I said to him, I said, what would you do if I hired you to do this? Now, I didn't know I was going to even be mayor when I was talking to him. I said, if I hired you, if I had a job for you, what would you do? And we discussed the intervention. How would, and he really wasn't attuned to that word when I started talking. He understood what it was, but that's, how do we get to people? How do we get to people who need the help? And he shared some things with me. I said, well, if a job comes up, I'll call you and talk with you about this. And when I became mayor, I hired him as what we called community liaison. And he was my director of community liaison. So he had a couple of other people that worked with him, that went around the community. I talked with people and tried to find out what they needed. But he's done very well. Right now, he's on the Prison Oversight Board in Delaware County. And that's quite an accomplishment for anyone, and in particular, it's quite an accomplishment for him. So I'm glad that I was able to help him. I still coach him. I still mentor him. He also mentors me on reentry because I believe in letting the experts do what the experts do. That's his world. I'm better at teaching how to stay out of jail. I'm not trying to be an expert of being in jail. I had to tell an inmate that one time. He wanted me to get to the point of what I was telling him. I said, well, I'm not an expert inmate. I'm more expert about staying out. And when you get out and you transition out, you should be thinking about calling me if you want to know what I do and how I can help you. And that's another thing that we've been working on. Jonathan and I have been going back to the prisons and trying to implement what we call pre-release programs. There are pre-release programs, but we believe that you should be at least a year out. If they know they're coming out next year, they should be in a pre-release program, talking to them, giving them some skills that they need and can use when they come back out here. Now, to many of the listening audience, to your surprise, there are some very, very productive inmates. They get certificates in a number of different things: photography, printing, communications, stress management, a number of different things. There's a number of colleges that go in, especially here in the city. Swarthmore College goes to Chester SCI. Widener goes over there. There's quite a few colleges. I'm not sure I think they had some people from Drexel or Temple come over there, but there's a number of things and opportunities for them to get certificates. So if you're interested in working with the reentry community, if you want to know more about it, please tune in to us on January the 27th on the Zoom call, and you're going to hear some very, very big people in that field with the possibility of some really, really special guests. Again, I can't release that now, but getting closer to that time when we get some confirmations from those people, I hope to have that information for you when I come back. I just want to give you some other points about recidivism and reentry, and these are going to be some things that will be talked about. Recidivism accounts for as much as 10% of the annual prison costs. And this highlights the need for more rehabilitation and community integration efforts. So what's rehabilitation? That means that if a person has done some things and committed a crime because of certain things, and those certain things can be anything from childhood neglect. It could be from a moment of passion, not being able to deal with their anger. See, a problem is not a problem until you have a problem with it. Your girlfriend didn't make you do that to her. You decided to do that to her because you were angry at not being able to communicate what you had to communicate with her. Your parents may have had a reason that they either gave you something or didn't give you something. They may not have had to give you. But now when we commit a crime, that means we have to find out what that reason is and try to get some kind of strategy to help us handle situations like that. See, life is not one event. Life goes on. Life 101. That's every day. Every day, when you lay down and go to sleep, class is over for that day. When you wake up in the morning, life 101 starts right again. It's there. It's not going anywhere. So if you don't know how to make decisions, and I'm using some examples that people may say, well, those are extreme examples. No, those are examples of what happens in the extreme. See, we become indecisive about a number of things. I don't like that person. Well, when we say that, then that automatically opens the door for us to make a decision that could land us in jail for the rest of our lives. Some of these people that I talked to, it was one decision. I wasn't there, I just went along for the ride. I know 3 cases of people who I know personally when I was younger that went along for the ride and they all got life in prison. 3 different groups. And all 3 of them, somebody ended up dead. So they weren't the trigger man, but they were in the car. They went with the people. They got life in prison. So how to make decisions is a big thing. But recidivism accounts about as 10% of the budget. And like I said, if people were really being rehabilitated, then we wouldn't have so much recidivism because they would come out with a skill set that would help them out. Again, I'm not here today to debate about prison reform. I'm just here to inform you about some of the areas that are going to be talked about on the 27th. So, community integration efforts, and that's what I mean by that pre-release program, getting them ready for what they're going to experience. If you just think if you were not in this community for 41 years, what would be some of the problems you would expect to encounter? Now, I'm just asking the listening audience to think in your head, what are 5 things that you believe are going to be issues for this man to live in this society now? So some of you graduated from school, some of you have grandchildren, some of us have grandchildren who have done well, some of us have grandchildren, unfortunately, who may be in the same situation that this man is who came back into this community. So we need to think of not just ourselves, but like I said, when we see someone or hear of someone back in the community who's been to jail, what can we do? If that person came to you and said, I don't want to keep doing the stuff I'm doing, can you help me? Just think, 5 things this person is going to encounter when they come back. Let me go on spending. Now, these figures can vary from state to state and depending upon which year you're talking about, but the actual cost of incarceration, this is to keep someone in jail. Now, there's some figures that say it's $14 to $70,000 a year, depending upon which prison you're in, whether it's a state, local prison, whether it's a federal prison, but anywhere from $14,000 to $70,000 per person. Now, in terms of the budget money that was spent in 2019, 2020 on prisons, I think just on incarceration, that's housing, somewhere in the area from $69 to $98 billion. That's $69 to $98 billion on housing. That's for them to live there, to eat there, to stay there, to watch them, to feed them, to take care of them medically and so forth. And some of the figures estimate that an additional 100 to $189 billion have been spent at different times on the legal system that puts them there. The lawyers, the judges, parole is huge, especially here in Pennsylvania. And when you tune into that Zoom call, and fortunately, we're just going to say positively and project that we're going to have an in-person clinic somewhere in May or June. We're going to be looking forward to that. When you hear some of the people that come to this pardons clinic, they're from paroles and probation. We've had people from the FBI come, people from state police, people from the Justice Department, Pennsylvania. We have politicians who come from Harrisburg. We have our local politicians who come, because reentry is huge. It's a huge thing. And we ought to want to make our community better and learn more. So just think, $89 billion they spend, and spend $69,000 per year for a person. Do you know, to get a degree from Delaware County Community College, I'm talking about a full liberal arts degree or nursing degree, costs you somewhere around $25,000. That's to get a degree. Now, there's other research that says that when you're looking at incarcerated populations and people who return to the community, when they get a degree or a certificate that they can do something. When I say a college degree, sometimes people don't look at a college degree, look at a carpentry certificate as a college degree, but when the college provides that certificate, that's a degree from that college, as long as it certifies that you can do something. And so they say when a person, again, the data and the research says when a person gets a 2-year degree or a certificate from a college, that in most cases, in those studies, you got 95% of the people never go back to jail again. So if that happens, if they'll get a degree when they come out of jail, why don't we take and spend that $25,000 on them before they go to jail? And that way, we won't have so many people incarcerated. So we really have to look and see what we're doing and how we're spending our money. And if that interests you, tune in on the Zoom call. This is another area of interest that a lot of people are talking about. Mass incarceration and mandatory sentencing strains the annual prison budgets. So what's mandatory sentencing? That if you commit a particular crime, you get a certain amount of years. You get a second chance, or some people don't get a second chance. It's just the degree of the crime is a mandatory. For instance, if you commit a crime with a gun, there's a mandatory 5. The problem with mandatory is that in many cases, it's not executed properly. In some cases, and again, going back to being a mayor and knowing the level of crime that I had to deal with, there were a number of people who committed crimes with guns in this community, and they went to jail, and 6, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months later, they were right back out on the street. How did that happen? Well, the neighbors didn't let them out of jail. The prison officials did. And why did prison officials let them out of jail? Because someone else intervened and got them out of jail. So my point is, if you can intervene to get them out once they go in, why can't we intervene before they go in? And again, try to get them to that point where we can spend that money. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, having been mayor, there are some people that don't need to be in the community. I'm just sorry to say. But no, I'm not sorry to say it. I want to be clear. People who committing crimes and hurting other people, if they've demonstrated they can't live with other people here, then we got to find another place for them. And that criminal justice system should work that way. But in many cases, we have too many people in jail for nonviolent crimes. That means that they're exhibiting behavior that we really can do something about and help to rehabilitate that person and skill them. One of the mantras we used to use when I taught down at Northern Virginia Community College in Alexandria, Virginia, we wrote a book called Getting Away Clean from negative peer pressure. And we work with some of the young people in the community. We taught them skills about how to handle peer pressure. And we went on a couple of radio programs and a couple of TV programs, and one of them was Howard University. And we told them that they said, why are you, and my friend, his name is George Loganell, Dr. George Loganell. They said, why are you going into this community with all that crime and drugs in the community? Why are you doing this? Both of you professors at Northern Virginia Community College, and John, you came from Pennsylvania, and this and that. Say, professorship or professorhood doesn't excuse us from having an obligation to try to help our children. Because whether I'm in Pennsylvania or I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, they're still my children. And we want to skill them before you kill them. That's what we wanted to do. And when we have people going to jail and coming back out, we need to skill them before they come back out here, because many times that's what got them put in jail. The inability, and then sometimes, in many cases, their refusal to do the right thing. But those who want to do something and want to do the right thing, this resetting, reentry, resetting, and redemption workshop will help them out. So if you're interested to alternatives to incarceration, as they say, alternatives to incarceration could help address systematic racism in the justice system and ease the economic burden that prisons place on state budgets. So here we go. We got this word coming up, racism, and people are trying to say, we don't need to teach about racism. But the things you ignore will surface again. Racism is not something we made up. There's something that happened to us. That's part of our history. And it happens continually because it's never, let me just stop, because it's not addressed properly. You can't address it one time and it go away. So there is a lot of racism in the criminal justice system. There's a lot of racism implemented before, during, and after incarceration. And those are things. And one of the things we want to teach, we know it's not going to go away, so we have to teach people skills of how to handle that. And people in vulnerable positions. See, abuse is another thing that not going to go away. But we accept that people can be abusive, and people continue to be abusive. But when we say racism, hey, we back up off of that. No, let's take the challenge and find out how we can reduce racism, not just in the criminal justice system, but racism in our community, how we can, see, you either go through something, you go around it, under it, or over it. You got to learn how to move in spite of racism. We've had some of our people accomplish some of the highest levels that there are to be accomplished in medicine, politics, science, engineering, dance, theater, in spite of the racism. So it doesn't mean that it's going to go away, but we do have to address it because, again, it costs millions of dollars. Again, mandatory sentencing and alternatives to incarceration could help with that. So if you're interested in that, tune in on the 27th, and you're going to get some answers to that. So the last thing that I want to talk about now, we said at the beginning, this is to inform and inspire. And I'm going to leave you with a couple of words of inspiration that I think you need to think about, because we want to make sure that that you do have a chance to help somebody. These are just words of encouragement that I think you need to think about. See, people come back into the community already because they've been in jail. They think they're a loser. Now, many of them won't say that, but that's their feeling. They've been out of touch. So the first thing, and this is a human factor, we try to compensate for that which we don't know. because we feel anxious and nervous and so forth. I'll give you 5 things that prevent us from moving forward in a second. But they feel like failures. But you can encourage them by telling them this. And if you need encouragement yourself and say, hey, you know, I ain't fooling with them. Those people cause me a lot of grief, or some people, or a person. Just remember this: failure is not a person. Failure is not a person, it's an event. You fail at something. You don't fail at being a human being unless you pull out of the human race, but you fail at something. You fail to make the grade. You fail to win the basketball game. You fail to win. You fail at a marriage. If you once you quit, that's done. So I failed that. But you have people out there that still love you in spite of that. You have people who still love you, and you have people who can love you. But you got to say, well, I am not a failure, not the person. I failed at that particular thing. That means you got another shot at it, another chance. So failure is not a person, it's an event. And success is not an event, it's a process. And again, I mentioned earlier that success is where preparedness and opportunity meet. And I've been telling those young men and women in jail, hey, get ready. You got to practice. One of the things you have, you got more time than anybody else outside the prison, you know. And they had to get used to me because I was bringing it to them. Everybody said, we want 100. I said, well, y'all want 100? They said, yes, we want 100. I say, the best thing you got right now is time. The judge gave you that. You earned it in some capacity, and sometimes people, hey, they get hit with it. They get wrongly accused of something. But when you're in jail, you got time. So failure is not a person. I failed at that, and now I have to get myself ready. And success is not an event. It's a process. And I have some friends in the reentry community, and I thank God for them because they come to me and they tell me things. They keep me informed, and they help me see and understand where I can help. And again, I'm not responsible for their success at all, but they come and they share with me what they're doing and what were some of those things that I said that could help them. And here's another thing that you can look at. One of the key things for your children, for yourself, for the community, is to set goals, and not only set goals, have a plan to achieve them, and then work that plan. Those 3 things. So you know, they say about 80% of people they have goals, but only about 13% of them have those goals written down with a plan to go with them. And then again, there's less people who are actually working their plan. So remember this quote: goals bring purpose to our steps. So set them and act on them. I'll say it again. Goals bring purpose to our steps. Set them and act on them. Years back, when I say years back now, Jonathan King and I sat down and we talked about reentry. So he was big on reentry, and he was my community liaison. I said, I'm going to help you. So we wrote and we got a grant to establish the Reentry Coalition in Chester. We got the first grant that ever came to Chester, and we set up the coalition when I was in there and when I was mayor. And we said, man, wouldn't it be nice if we get a chance to get out there in the county and try to get some things done? And now, 5-6 years later, he's on the Prison Oversight Board. We've got other people who are working from Chester out there in the county working on the Reentry Coalition. We've got all kinds of grants and all that are coming to the city or coming to the county for reentry at this point. Not saying that we did it all. We just said goals bring purpose to your steps. So every time an opportunity came up for him to go to a workshop or me to go to a workshop, we went or he went, and they invited him, and he called me and told me what was going on, what was coming down the line. What did I say to him? What do you need in terms of support? So goals bring purpose to our steps. See, when we have a goal, we can see where it fits with what we're doing. And so set the goal, make them clear, concrete, and then act on them. And if you can't do it by yourself, that's good. Because one of the things that people who go to prison and come back in the community have to learn is not dependency and not independency, because they come back, they left dependent, and then now they're coming back, they've been incarcerated, dependent. So dependency and not independency, that's, man, I'll do it by myself. I don't need nobody to help me. But they need to learn interdependency. That's how teams work, interdependent. That's what happens. So there's no I in teamwork, except the two that I talked about when I started. If you're going to be on a team, inform and inspire your teammates. That's the only I, or the only I's in team. So help, that's an action word. Do that, help them out. So again, I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope that on the 27th, you're on that Zoom call listening in. I'll be working in there somewhere, part of the, I was scheduled to be the MC if we were at Widener, so we're rethinking my role, but I'll do whatever it takes in order for us to have a really great informative workshop for the community. And again, if you are a reentrant, if you're a family member or someone who's reentering, if you're a professional who works with people who are reentering in our community, or if you want to be, this is a good place for a wannabe. You know how people are wannabe? If you want to work with people who have been incarcerated, please tune into the workshop. You'll see on the flyer, there'll be a Zoom flyer out soon. If you look up on the billboard, as you travel back and forth on 291, you'll see a billboard that has that flyer up there. And so again, the Zoom call will be up soon, and you'll be able to tune in. So I hope this has been informative for you. I'm going to sign off now, and this is John Linder, hoping to inform you and inspire.
She's putting all of her cards down on the table, knowing there's no way that she'll be able.
Cultivating mature positivity. CMPRadio.net.